Welcome to Satay,
Okay.
a podcast about the foods that have shaped Malaysia. I'm Dr. Yong, scientist, food writer, and broadcaster.
And I'm Philip Gibson, photographer and follower of Christ.
And in this series, we explore the history, cultures, and cuisines of Malaysia, from the ancient lands of Southeast Asia all the way through to the creation of a modern-day nation. In today's episode, we take a look at chicken rice and the making of an empire. So, cue the Darth Vader soundtrack and get ready for Satay.
Okay.
It's the final episode of the season, Philip.
Whoop whoop.
We have gone on such a journey, and thank you so much to all our listeners for joining us on this ride.
It has been an adventure.
But before we lament too much, let's get straight into the episode. So in the last episode, we looked at the Malay and Indonesian archipelagos in the 19th century, and we talked about the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824, where Britain and Holland basically carved up that whole region to make British Malaya and the Dutch East Indies. And so today we're going to continue that journey into the 19th and early 20th century to see how Britain fully colonized British Malaya. But before we do that, let's take a look at our food symbol of the day, which ties us to the past and reminds us of this point in history, and that is chicken rice.
Chicken rice. Well, I think my first experience of chicken rice would have been in Adelaide at Adelaide Central Market institution called Ricky's Chicken Rice, creatively named.
Ricky's.
To me, though, chicken rice, as far as I can tell for you, is one of those dishes that you crave when you're ill. It's that kind of just, it's not stodge, but it's like comforting and quite plain, quite easy.
Yeah, chicken rice provides me with so much comfort, not just when I'm physically ill, but if I'm emotionally ill.
Yeah, it's a comfort food. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't really explain it, but I guess every culture has its version of comfort food, you know, like chicken noodle soup. A lot of people have that when they're feeling either physically or mentally ill. So chicken rice is that for, I think, a lot of Malaysians.
I don't know that I've ever thought about having chicken noodle soup when I'm mentally unwell, but
There are people.
Yeah,
surely.
yeah. I think for me, I probably gravitate towards like macaroni and cheese or something like that. But that's kind of nostalgic. But yeah, I guess that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you that don't know, chicken rice doesn't refer to any kind of chicken and rice combo. It's specifically Hainanese chicken rice, and it's basically rice served with poached chicken, a couple of different sauces, and a soup. So to make chicken rice, it's a multi-step process, and if you're an engineer, you can probably make some kind of workflow diagram of what's happening.
Okay.
But basically, you take a whole chicken, a really high quality one, you pop it in water with, you know, some ginger and whatnot, poach it low and slow, and then take that chicken out and then leave that to rest.
Right.
The stock you've just created is used for two things. One is the soup,
Right.
and the other is to actually cook the rice, and that's how you give chicken rice its unique actual flavor.
It's definitely god tier rice as far as I'm
Oh,
concerned.
yeah, it's sort of like a little bit oily because you usually use chicken fat
Right. Yeah.
to actually cook the rice as well, but it's got this lovely fragrance. You can eat it by itself.
I would eat it by itself, and I would almost be like, I would say if you were going to make fried rice, using Hainanese chicken rice to make fried rice would be like
Oh my God.
the most flavoursome, I think, chicken, like fried rice that you could get.
Yeah. So it is actually quite plain though. So it's often eaten with like a sour chili sauce and then like a ginger spring onion sauce. But in terms of like the repertoire of Chinese dishes, it is probably the most plain thing that we make.
It's boiled chicken and boiled rice,
Yeah.
with a couple of embellishments.
It feels so British in many ways.
Well, we love to boil things, yeah.
So as I said, this is a Hainanese style of chicken rice. And the Hainanese are a cultural group from China. And they brought this dish with them using what's called wunchang chicken. So the whole history of this dish is that there's a place on the island of Hainan. If you're not familiar with Chinese geography,
Get your map out.
get your map out. Hainan is sort of like, you know, the Hawaii of China. It's in the south, it's very tropical. And there's this chicken there that famously has beautiful flavor, fatty. And so when you cook it by itself, you don't actually need much else with it. And so these migrants from the island of Hainan came to Malaysia, with tales of Wonchang chicken, and that's how Hainanese chicken rice was born in Malaysia and also Singapore. So it's a specific regional variant of a Hainanese dish.
I could imagine that we will struggle to replicate that in the UK with our growth hormone proteined out there nut chickens that are 28 days old when they get slaughtered.
Yeah, it's the same in Australia, and so my mum would always say buy corn-fed chicken,
Right.
or buy like a high-quality organic chicken of some kind. That corn-fed, that yellow skin, I think that's supposed to be reminiscent of Wonchang chicken. Anyway, so chicken rice is this very much Hainanese dish. And we can see the significance of the Hainanese community when we start to look at the colonization of Malaya by Britain. And that's what we're going to explore today. So as I mentioned last episode, we saw how Britain gained its sphere of influence through that Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824. But with this treaty, it didn't actually mean they could rule the region. They could just monopolize the trade in many aspects. The places they could rule outright were their settlements, which were Penang, Singapore, and Melaka. So they had already gained those through various nefarious means. So as we move forward in history and trade and power becomes greater for Britain, we start to move away from the British East India Company as that dominant force, and the British Crown starts to get more involved because trade, commerce, and power is getting so large. So the British Crown is really the driving force at this stage. British Crown, though, wasn't initially that excited about expanding their interests in the peninsula. They didn't actually need to get more land.
Okay.
But all the trade merchants that were operating in Malaya at the time were whispering to the folks in London, going like, hey guys, if you don't seize more land, the Germans are gonna. And so they used this sort of fear to drive the British Crown to expand and colonize the rest of Malaysia.
It just kind of goes to show the kind of lack of a way. Well, I guess in the day before, like, telecommunications, before even telegram, whatever, it was 3 or 4 weeks at sea to get a letter back and forth between Britain and its colonies, or Europe and their colonies. It's amazing how much, kind of embellishment, I guess, people would get away with in terms of asking for more authority or getting more means, I guess.
So the British Crown starts to think about colonization. And so we're getting a bit more geographically intense in this episode, as we always do. So if you want to play along, I recommend getting out a map of Malaysia. A modern day map is fine, but make sure it's got all the states outlined. And those states would have been the different regions controlled by different Malay rulers back in the day. So if you get on a map, get out a pen, and we're going to cross out all the regions that Britain will slowly take over the course of this episode, across the course of the 19th century. So right now you can cross off Penang, Singapore, and Melaka.
As the Strait settlements.
Yes, so Britain has already obtained these, but keep that red pen handy as we go through this episode. Now we're only actually going to look at the Malay Peninsula. We're not going to look at the Borneo side.
Yes, we'll come back to Borneo.
Yeah. Okay, so Britain wants to take over, but lessons from the past tell them what not to do. And what you shouldn't do if you're trying to colonize is depose a sultan. The reason why you shouldn't do that, A, it usually starts a war,
right,
which is very, very expensive. And B, it means you get trust issues with the population. Just because you've deposed of a sultan and now you're the new ruler doesn't mean anyone's going to listen to you. And so those two lessons lead Britain to develop what's called the residential system.
Okay.
So the residential system is basically a British appointed resident to be installed as an advisor to a Malay sultan or ruler. So the role of this advisor would be to basically indirectly rule by whispering sweet nothings into the sultan and getting the sultan to act on your behalf.
Okay, if we're going to go back to Game of Thrones, is this the kind of Littlefinger sort of, no, the spider? No?
Probably all of the above.
Right, yeah, true.
So this was a system all about indirect rule rather than direct rule. But in order to enact this residential system and get these residents into those sultanates, Britain needed to sign treaties with the Malay rulers. And their first opportunity came in 1873 in a region of Perak. So get out that map and get your pen ready. So Perak is north of the capital of Kuala Lumpur. And in the late 19th century, a couple of things were happening at the time. First, there was what we call the Larut Wars. This was this wide-ranging conflict between Chinese quote-unquote secret societies, and the disputes were largely over tin mining.
Right.
Second, there were succession issues happening in Perak at the time between two opposing rivals, Raja Abdullah and Sultan Ismail. Both were saying that they were the rightful heir to the throne.
Okay.
Importantly, Raja Abdullah was pro-British, but Sultan Ismail was not, and he was pretty suspicious of British rule. Noticing this pattern, Britain approaches Raja Abdullah and says to him, we will recognize you as the rightful heir to the throne. We will also help you to quash these Larut wars with these warring Chinese societies, and in return, appoint one of our people as your resident, who will advise you in all future matters. Raja Abdullah agrees, and they sign what becomes known as the Pangkor Treaty of 1874. Pangkor being an island just off the mainland, but still in Perak. And so a British man named James Birch is appointed as the resident. Of course, Philip, the devil is in the details. And when Britain and Raja Abdullah signed the treaty, there were actually two versions. One was in English and one was in Malay.
Okay.
And the details between these two versions differed.
Okay.
Or at least the interpretation differed. So I will say that the Malay one no longer exists. I think they can't find an authentic copy, but it's very likely that Raja Abdullah saw the role of the resident as someone who literally just advises, but that the advice didn't actually have to be taken up or acted upon. But Britain saw the role of an advisor as something much more involved and hands-on. They assumed that the Malay ruler would listen to all of the advice by the resident and help him enact that advice.
Right.
Britain does not realize that sultans generally don't have that power.
Okay. So overcompensating then.
Yeah, Malay courts at that time were generally much more consensus driven. You need to get your Malay chiefs involved and you need to get their approval at the same time.
Okay, right.
So even if the sultan wanted to implement the resident's advice, he actually couldn't.
Okay.
But there were lots of other issues too. So one of them was that Britain didn't like religion in its administration.
Okay.
But that whole concept of being secular is totally non-existent in the Malay world.
As in like the courts are religious.
Yeah,
Well, Sharia law, I guess.
Yeah, you can't separate them.
Yeah.
Even to this day, there's not this massive separation.
Yeah.
But there were also issues around taxation and how these finances were getting collected, and lots of issues around slavery too, which was happening in the Malay world at that time as well. So this gives you the situation where Britain thinks it's got all this legal authority and control, but all the Malay rulers and all the chiefs are like, no, you don't. And so there's all this hostility, resentment, and tension that's building. And the resident, James Birch, ends up being assassinated.
Didn't see that coming.
Britain, obviously, quite upset about this. And so they retaliate quite strongly. And they send in their troops from both India and Hong Kong. They pursue both Raja Abdullah and Sultan Ismail. They exile them. They exile a whole bunch of other Malay chiefs, and they also hang a bunch of them as well.
Oh dear.
So the really strong signal that Britain is sending is that if you go along with us and do as we say, you'll be rewarded. But if you don't, you will be punished. We will exile you, kill you, whatever we have to do.
Right.
And the British Empire, being who they are and being so powerful at this time, they can crush anyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like those Malay rulers really had the military power to take them on.
Yeah, I guess this was around about that era where we would be looking at maps and the sun doesn't set on the British Empire and that sort of a thing.
Yeah. So, you know, if you are one of the Malay rulers, you kind of have no choice but to be like, yeah, okay, well, I either die or I go along with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And this is how Britain made its empire in British Malaya. So it's through this method of the residential system and the coercion by Britain that it came to gain Perak. So if you've got your map, tick off Perak or put a cross, however you're feeling. And Britain would also go on to sign similar residential treaties with Pahang, Selangor, and Negeri Sembilan. So you can tick off those too. So these are all in sort of the central belt of the Malay Peninsula.
And again, it probably should be noted that these areas were starting to be reasonably developed, and there would have been a lot of like rubber and tin mining going on here, which of course Britain is interested in trade, and so making its money.
It wants that sweet, sweet cash. And so if we do a map check, we can see that what we're left with now is Johor, which is in the south, and all of the northern states. So we have the states of Kedah, Perlis, Terengganu, and Kelantan. Britain, though, is in a bit of conundrum to get these northern states.
Okay.
They bordered Thailand, and at the time, all of those states were under the loose overlordship of Siam. So it wasn't really like an onerous relationship. Mm-hmm. Siam let them do whatever they want.
Right.
They had quite a lot of independence, I believe. This doesn't mean, however, that Siam liked that Britain had their eye on it.
Sure.
But I think Siam was in a bit of a bind at the time.
Right.
Because you had Britain encroaching from the south, and then you had France encroaching from the north.
Right, yeah.
And so, as we know, whenever Europe enters Southeast Asia, they always play so kindly. So yeah, I think Siam would have felt pressured to act one way or the other.
Yeah, well, probably feeling a bit pinced, certainly with British India and Burma being next door as well.
Yeah. So Britain, being very, very persistent, ends up holding a secret convention with Siam in 1897.
Who is it secret from? Europe?
It's secret from the Malay world.
Oh.
Britain and Siam are doing deals that affect the Malay world, but without Malay input. So at this secret convention, they agree that Siam would continue to be overlord, but Brits were the only third power, the only European that could actually come in, claim territory, make trade deals with those northern states. And this is again, basically in reference to the threat from Germany.
Okay.
So again, the sultans and the Malay rulers of those northern states have no idea what's going on. And this secret convention comes into play when those northern states enter periods of financial difficulty and they turn to Siam for help. Siam agrees to help them, but on the proviso that they install a financial advisor to help oversee matters. And those advisors happen to be British.
I see.
And it was basically only a matter of time before Britain was able to formally gain those.
And administer them, yeah.
So in 1909, Siam and Britain signed what's called the Anglo-Siamese Treaty, or the Bangkok Treaty, which transferred ownership of those states, Kedah, Perlis, Terengganu, and Kelantan, to Britain. And again, this was done without consultation by any of the Malay rulers, and many of them saw this as an absolute betrayal. And the ruler of Kedah stated at the time that his country had been, quote, bought and sold like a buffalo. So if you go back to your map, you can tick off all those 4 states. And what you should notice now is that there's just one state left, and that is Johor in the south. And all that Britain had to do to gain Johor was wait for the Sultan to die. So Sultan Abu Bakr of Johor, very popular, very independent. He died in 1895, and he was replaced by his 22-year-old son. Very young, unfortunately not as strong and independent as his father, and he could not resist the power of Britain. And so Britain obtains Johor under the residential system as well. And with that, Britain has made its empire. It's colonized the entirety of the Malay Peninsula and could now act however it wanted to. Okay, you can put away your map for now.
Yeah, that was a lot. Yeah.
I don't know how much people know about the residential system, Philip.
Yeah.
Actually, whether in Malaysia or beyond. And I don't think people realize how coercive Britain was in their pursuit of colonization. I don't think they realize how dishonest Britain was, how much of a bully Britain was.
Yeah, we probably assumed that it was forced by another way, not this kind of like sneaky kind of conversational style.
Yeah. So back to thinking about the history for a bit, you now have a whole bunch of very wealthy British people in Malaya. So these are the residents. We've got governors, we've got administrators, traders, etc. And they all have very wealthy households because they have now families. There are whites-only societies. But you do have to ask yourself, who was actually taking care of the British people? When I say taking care, I mean like who was operating their households, who was cooking for them, who was running all the domestic duties.
Right.
And that's where the Hainanese people come into play. So previously, we've talked about Chinese migration to British Malaya, but it's important to reinforce that Chinese people aren't a homogenous group. And across the centuries, there are 5 main groups of Chinese people that came. You have the Teochew and the Cantonese, and they came from the Guangdong region. You have Hokkiens from Fujian region. You also have Hakkas from the mountainous areas of Guangdong, Guangxi, and Fujian. And you also have the Hainanese from the island of Hainan. And they came in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. One thing we haven't mentioned in this podcast yet, though, is why so many Chinese people came. So we've talked about, I guess, the pull factors, which is the availability of jobs, particularly in tin mining and agricultural.
Right.
But we haven't really talked about the push factors. What else was prompting them to leave China at that time?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess if we're talking about the middle of the 1800s, then I feel most British people and most people around the world have probably heard of the Opium Wars. So what a lot of people haven't heard of is the Taiping Rebellion, which I think is one of the most poorly named conflicts maybe ever.
It does sound like a cute Star Wars sort of rebels against the empire.
I think so. To me, it sounds as though somebody's walked into a royal palace somewhere and has had stern words with somebody. You know, like maybe knocked over a few chairs and tables.
Yes, broke a vase.
Maybe, yeah. And a bit of a strop. I'm just going to paint the scene. I understand this is a Malaysian and Southeast Asian food podcast, but I think it's important probably just to paint the picture of what was going down in China at this time. But I'm going to leave China for a second and I'm going to go to another place that starts with C, and that's Connecticut. So we're going to go back to 1802, and a guy called Edwin Stevens was born in Connecticut. He became a Christian missionary, and in 1835 he heads over to southern China. He ends up in Guangzhou and he's handing out these Christian pamphlets and happens to give it to a Hakka guy called Hong Shui-Kwan, who reads it but kind of dismisses it and doesn't really think about it. He goes up by a couple of years, but then succumbs to this episode of having these intense like fever dreams and visions of this bearded figure and another individual telling him to banish the world of demons and all of the rest of it. I think what's also important to talk about at this point in time is China's under the rule of the Qing dynasty, and the Qing dynasty have just fought the first of 2 opium wars and had to make various concessions to the British and various other European enterprises to allow trade into the area.
Classic.
So British were content. They've got Hong Kong and they've got their trading ports, but the Qing dynasty is definitely feeling a bit
bit sore, a bit sour from this defeat.
Sure. And I think there's a bit of kind of growing discontent within China itself at this time.
Right, yeah, of course.
And so here we have Hong, who picks up this pamphlet that he got off of this guy Edwin from Connecticut, who goes a bit kind of like, wait, all of these visions make sense. I was talking to God. And this guy then somehow, it makes perfect sense to him that he is actually the son of God and the younger brother of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so he goes on to establish what becomes the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. And he himself, as a messenger, the son of God, decides that he should be the king of China.
Self-proclaimed.
Self-proclaimed. It's, we're getting a bit culty now. And so spreading the good word. It should also be mentioned that this is a very strange version of Christianity.
Right.
He's kind of borrowed a couple of elements of maybe kind of local kind of like folklore or whatever, but he's interspliced that with whatever was on this pamphlet. I cannot imagine it was the entire Bible. Yeah. And so this guy, you know, is kind of somewhere between Christianity and somewhere between kind of utopian communism. No alcohol, no drugs, no sex, no gambling. Everything is banned. Everybody's supposed to be celibate. Husbands and wives can't even sleep together.
Right.
But he himself keeps a harem of women in his palace.
Of course he does.
So, you know, love a bit of exceptionalism at the head of a cult. But he believes in a lot of kind of equality and the kind of like shared ownership of the land and what have you. And so it's kind of early communism before it was even a thing. I think even Karl Marx actually was a bit kind of like, hey, this guy's not so bad, but then it all went wrong. So as they were leaving where they started off in kind of the south of China and spread into central China, anybody that didn't agree with them, they murdered. It was pretty bloody.
Yeah.
Women, children, babies, all of it. Just if they stood in the way, they were kind of... People had absolutely caught this fever. So they're ransacking all of these cities. The Qing dynasty is trying their best to kind of like stop it from happening. And then Hong retreats to his palace, gets paranoid and stops kind of, leading the front. Eventually Hong succumbs to suicide, possibly, or it's unclear how he died. His son takes over, but it doesn't last too long. The Qing dynasty eventually defeat them, but in its wake, they have killed, estimates go anywhere from 10 million to 30 million.
Wow.
They've covered a massive swathe of China in this period of time, displacing millions of people who managed to flee out of their way so that they weren't murdered themselves. And that is probably why so many Chinese people left China in the middle of the 1800s.
Because there was risk of getting killed.
Or radicalized.
Poverty.
Yeah.
So I guess many of them were probably refugees.
I think so, definitely. I think if it wasn't the direct consequence of the amount of murder that was taking place as this heavenly kingdom was spreading through China.
Yeah.
You're losing all of the kind of like peasant and kind of working classes who didn't have the means necessarily to get out of the way, and so the land is completely left to ruin, and so famine, etc. So I think some people speculate that maybe even as many as 100 million people were affected by this crusade, effectively, for want of a better word. So this is why there's such a huge Chinese population outside of China at this point, and why so many of them ended up in Malaysia. And so a lot of them did come over to work on the tin mines, work on the plantations and things like that.
It's a wild butterfly effect when you think about this Connecticut-born Christian missionary going off to China, radicalizing someone who would then come to believe he is the brother of Jesus Christ and the Son of God, who then kicks off the bloodiest war in global history.
At that point, I think, it's probably bloodier than the First World War.
Yeah, which then prompts the mass migration of Chinese people to Malaya, who bring with them chicken rice.
That's it. And do you know what's funny? This guy, Edwin Stevens, I think he died before any of this kicked off. He died in, I think, his late 30s or something. And didn't live to see the consequence of handing out pamphlets in southern China.
You could only imagine what he would be thinking.
Well, if there is a heaven and he's looking down upon it, he's probably got his head in his hands and doing a lot of screaming. So anyway, there he is, Edward Stevens and Hong Shui Quan.
So that's quite the push factor.
I would say that one of the bloodiest wars in history, I think, would be enough to make me probably want to get out and leave.
And the Opium Wars.
And the Opium Wars.
So back to Malaya, and we have this mass migration of Chinese people, but the Hainanese are actually one of the last to arrive. They come in the late 19th century and early 20th century. And because they're so late to the game, a lot of the other jobs in mining and agriculture are already taken up. And so they find themselves working in more of the service-based industries. So many of them end up working in wealthy British households as cooks. They also find themselves working in hotels, and then they also work in restaurants and set up their own service-based businesses. And so Hainanese cuisine then really begins to permeate Malaya's culture. And Hainanese cooking is still a massive part of Malaysia's culture today. And I think in more ways than people perhaps realize. So when it comes to chicken rice itself, massively popular in Malaysia and Singapore states that that's their national dish. I will say, yes, it's absolutely a big part of Singapore's history, but you can't deny that it's also part of Malaysia's history at the same time.
And here we have that sticky thing about Nusantara and who owns the food.
Exactly. We can see how intertwined all of our cultures actually are. When it comes to chicken rice, though, even though that dish itself is very popular and very much preserved by various businesses and households, there are some types of chicken rice that aren't so well preserved. And in Melaka, there's a specialty called chicken rice bowls.
Which are different to the chicken balls that we get in our local Cantonese takeaways in the UK.
Very different. So Malacca's chicken rice are rice that's been shaped, I guess, into golf balls.
Right, yeah.
Golf ball size, and the rice ends up being quite glutinous and quite sticky.
Right.
So I wanted to find out a little bit more about this very unique Malaccan chicken rice. So we ended up speaking to Xianji Chen. He's a chef and he's also the owner of Ho-Ki Chicken Rice in Malaka. This is a really popular chicken rice stall on Jonker Walk, which is the main tourist strip in Malaka. And so we spoke to him to hear about how his family brought this iconic dish to the people of Malaka.
I'm speaking Mandarin. My surname is Chen and my given name is Xianji. I followed in my father's footsteps to build this business to where it is today. Actually, it was my mother who started the chicken rice business. My father helped her. In the early days, my mother worked at the docks here in Melaka. It's a small place, so she and my eldest brother would carry the rice balls on a pole and sell them there. Back then, each rice ball was about the size of a baseball. Yes, they were bigger. At the dock, we had no proper containers, just newspapers and plastic sheets. We'd wrap a few rice balls, add a bit of chicken and chili, and then sell them to the dock laborers. No, in the early days, we kept it simple. Laborers just needed a meal to fill them up. That's how it started and gradually grew. Then a kind person helped introduce my mother to a small store rental in the Chinatown area. After a few years there, another good Samaritan introduced us to this little shop.
Ho-Ki was established in 1963 and has been going for more than 60 years. But despite surviving land reclamation issues and COVID lockdowns, Ho-Ki and their famous chicken rice balls may not survive for much longer.
In our early days, we served three main customer groups: locals, tourists, and foreign visitors. We couldn't serve Malay patrons because we lacked the proper permits. Now, the regulations are a mess.
Xianji is referring to regulations concerning humanity's greatest threat, a threat so powerful that governments around the world have struggled to contain it. It's the threat of traffic. Ho-Ki is situated in Jonker Walk, one of the busiest tourist streets. Over the past year or so, the local government has regularly changed the road layout to cope with an increase in tourist numbers. Parking areas change, two-way streets become one-way streets, and some roads are blocked altogether. Often, these changes occur without warning, and it's having a devastating impact on businesses.
To be fair, some changes are good, but closing that road devastates all the nearby businesses. It's no joke. Locals won't come, and out-of-towners won't either. They face traffic jams and one-way roads with no parking. Who wants to walk that far after a meal? I heard from friends parking at Kuan Yin Temple costs 10 ringgit and 15 ringgit if the lot is full and they have to move their car. 3 cars mean 45 ringgit just for parking. They definitely won't come, even we wouldn't. On holidays, foreign visitors have nearly vanished. They get lost when Waze reroutes them, so they can't find Jonker Walk. Yes, but it's funny. They allow access on Saturdays and Sundays, yet block near the public bank. You think you know the route, but on weekends it's closed. Then during major holidays, like 1st of May, they close it for 5 days. Who would expect that? So visitors can't find a way. There's no guideline on when it's changed. We're in chaos and businesses suffer, even though there's demand. In the past, we had queues. Now, on big holidays, there's no queue at all. There are still a few, especially during Chinese New Year. But since the route changes, there hasn't been a single day with queues in over 6 months.
Xianji remained calm and composed when we spoke, but it couldn't hide the facts. Even though Malacca has seen a massive boom in tourism, Xianji says that he has witnessed a 30 to 40% drop in his customers.
Some people won't speak up, but our generation remembers every peak period. Business boomed not only during Chinese New Year, but on any holiday. The problem now is tour groups. They get priority and convenience, but we don't benefit.
And that was Xianji Chen from Ho-Ki Chicken Rice. So I really loved hearing the story of how his family set up shop in Malacca and how these chicken balls came to be. Because whenever we would go back to Malacca, my mom would be obsessed with getting these chicken balls. I never understood why she was so obsessed, because they're literally just, the shape of the rice has changed.
Yeah.
And I always was like, why. So it was really nice to hear his story about how they started as baseballs and then have morphed from there. And I guess the need that they were filling, because dock workers needed something they could just eat with their hands and could just take away.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was just nostalgia, in the same way that when I was over in Australia for 4 years, I couldn't wait to come back and have Greggs. So, it's a man of simple pleasures. But, it's absurd, though, that local government, with their traffic intervention, is the main kind of issue.
I think what's interesting is that most of the interviews we've had in this podcast so far talk about cultural preservation from the point of view of maybe generations not passing on knowledge,
right,
for instance, or commodification of culture, twisting what the culture has become. But we have this really interesting situation where traffic policy could be causing the death of cultural icons.
It's from everybody else that we've spoken to, it definitely seems a bit more quote unquote serious.
But I think it really points to the importance of governments and their role in ensuring cultures are preserved and traditions are preserved for the future, especially in a place like Malacca, which has built itself as a World Heritage City.
Yeah, it's quite an intense place. We were there during Chinese New Year. I mean, we couldn't move, but it's
because it's so busy.
Yeah, and I think this kind of also comes back to something that you've said about Malacca from your own personal point of view, is that every time you go back, it's a little less like itself.
Yeah, because Malacca is so popular with tourists now.
Yeah, particularly after the UNESCO recognition.
Yeah, governments and I guess the city has now catered the experience to tourists rather than to the local residents. And so what I see now is that it's becoming such a touristy city, but not offering authentic and traditional Malaccan experiences.
Right, yeah.
For instance, they recently installed a floating market in Malacca.
Right.
There has never been such a thing in Malacca's history.
Yeah.
We have never had floating markets. We've never obtained our fruits and vegetables or our products that way.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that's not been to Malacca, before they had some serious man-made intervention, it was kind of just a stream. It really wasn't big enough to be, having boats going up it. Yeah, it's just a Thai phenomenon, and it just seems to...
Yeah, it's a Thai phenomenon. It's been exported from Thailand, but I don't know if tourists would even realize that this is not Malaccan at all, and I can't blame them for thinking that.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, for any kind of Westerner or even Chinese tourists, they just would be completely ignorant to that.
If you're enjoying this episode, you can follow us on social media at SateOK. We'll be sharing beautiful photos taken by Philip of Malaysia, its people, and of course, the food. We'll also share photos of Malaysia from the archives, so you can see how the country has changed over time. You can also find links to give us a tip or donation to show your appreciation for the work we're doing. So head to our socials at SateOK or visit our website, sateok.com. So if we go back to our Hainanese community, chicken rice isn't the only important Hainanese dish. So there are also kopitiams, which are basically coffee shops that are historically run by Hainanese people. And if you've ever visited Malaysia, you would have definitely gone to a kopitiam, because that's where you're getting your kaya, your coconut jam toast. That's where you're getting your coffee from, your half-boiled eggs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, typically a breakfast thing.
Yeah, breakfast thing. They usually close by about 2.
Yeah.
But Malaysian Hainanese food is a cuisine onto itself, and I don't think people actually realize this. So because Hainanese people were working in these British households and hotels, they learned to cook a lot of British meals, but then they fused Chinese elements. So this created this new cuisine with, say, pork chops, chicken chops, but done in a Chinese way. And so Malaysian Hainanese cooking is that true hybrid between British and trad Hainanese.
Yeah.
Today, there really aren't that many specialist Hainanese restaurants.
They cook this hybrid British.
Yeah. And possibly because it's overshadowed by so many other different cuisines. And because when you look at a Hainanese menu, you're like, pork chops, chicken chops. I didn't come to Malaysia to eat this.
Right, yeah.
So to find out more, we went to Penang and we spoke to Tanti Yong and Sherine Tan, and they run Happy Garden Restaurant. This is a very traditional Hainanese restaurant. It's based in the seaside region of Batu Ferringhi, which is very popular amongst tourists. And at the restaurant, Yong runs the kitchen while Sherine is
Front of house.
Yep. So we spoke to them about their history and their perspectives on Malaysian Hainanese food.
I don't go for, my education is only 10 years. Lower school, 6 years. And then high school, 4 years. Not very good in education, so English sometimes might be broken. My parent is from China, Hainan Island. I'm the first generation here.
Yong began his cooking career while he was still in high school, working in the Palm Beach Hotel, then one of the largest hotels in Penang. He shared his story about how he learned to cook, starting off at the bottom rung of the ladder.
As a kitchen helper, or you might call the apprentice. So, in the kitchen, do a lot of job. And then you cannot, the law say 8 hours, but no. I have to work at least 10 hours, 11 hours, or 12 hours. Most probably with 10, 11 hours. So I start my career and with very high paid, $40 each month.
So, with long hours and low pay, Yong learned how to cook. But the teaching method was anything but formal. Most of the time, Yong learned through observation.
You have to wash everything, and then at the back of my pocket, I buy one written notebook. It's branded 555, and a very cheap, the cheapest pen at the back. Every time I'm watching people, because I don't have a very good memory, so I must write down. So I go to a site, I write simple. Then I buy another big textbook. I go home every night. I have to write down. Then only I go for repeat again.
So you're writing recipes or...
Yeah, all the recipe.
Yeah.
And in the old day, the senior would not like you to, you stand aside and watch them do all the good job. Because it's top secret. Because if their pay is 100 paid or 120 or 250, because they will worry you might take over the job. They want to feed the family. See? So you have the very hardworking, helping them. Then they like you. Hey, you come, you do this, you do that, okay. Or you do this, you do that. They doing things very fast. At the same time, I'm helping them. Helping you is helping me.
Yeah.
So, helping you, helping them, I have to look. Later on, I go for my lunch. I put my lunch aside, I take out and write. So after that, I learn how people doing grill, how people doing roast, how they doing the Chinese food, how.
The cooking stations weren't the only place of learning. Yong also had to check the dishwashing areas to see what diners were and were not enjoying.
Why this thing, the lobster, the steak, the soup, why people left? Oh, have to analyze. Why these things people don't finish? Must analyze. It's not only you collect the money, what you sold out. No. How the people like your food or not. So must we go to the people who the service side they collect to the dishwasher area. Yeah, this is why we have to learn. And I have to learn. I have to watch out. This chef, which is doing roast good, which is doing pan cooking good, which one is doing dessert good. I have to watch out. So I have to learn. This chef make the lobster tomato, finish. Oh, finish all. They knock the head from the lobster. Then I know what they are using. They use white wine to cook the sauce. What cheese to put on top. Then I know. Yeah.
This kitchen environment equipped Yong with a lot of skills and knowledge, but it also exposed him to the head chef's wild mood swings.
Oh, you must be very dedicated and very respect them. When they scold me, I cannot stand. I'm 16 years old. I go to a side, hide at the fridge. I cry. I clean my tears. People laugh at me. You cry? No, just now I peel onion. Sorry, I got to wash my onion. I always remember.
Hainanese chefs were expected to master a range of dishes to cater to the colonial palate. And eventually, establishments like the Palm Beach Hotel paved the way for new hybrid cuisine to emerge.
English people will teach our people how to make bread. They teach us how to make grill. Then later on, they teach us how to make cold dish, how to make salad, how to make roast. Then we later on, and then we must how to know doing gravy or demi-glace. Yeah, you must know how to make not only cold chicken. You must know how to make lobster. No, you cannot not know to grill only. You must know how to make lobster tomato. That's why we are imperfect. Then English people tell us how you make coffee, how you make tea, how you make custard sauce. That's why we invented kaya. Kaya is we Hainanese people get
Coconut jam.
Yes.
we English people say twist and turn. We look at the English people doing custard. We twist a bit and turn a bit into kaya. Very good. People put into for sandwich in the bread. And then you mix with butter. Oh, it comes in perfect flavor. I talked to my friend. We are the first people to do the fusion.
Hainanese chefs became renowned in the region for their culinary skill, and it's little wonder why, as many have spent years honing their skills. But for Yong, cooking is more than a vocation. It's his intellectual property, and he's incredibly protective of his culinary knowledge.
You know, a hotel in Singapore, 5-star. Contact her. That time I'm very busy.
He wanted to buy his recipe, but to go and teach the chef for 1 month.
He asked me close 1 month, go to teach their hotel. And then I tell some customer, how do you think if I close 1 month, I go to teach them, I charge them 1 million. Still very cheap, they say.
What?
Still very cheap.
Yeah.
Nothing if I charge them 1 million.
1 million sounded like a lot of money to me, but then Yong broke down the price of some classic Malaysian hawker recipes.
A very old lady or very old uncle who are cooking char kway teow or Hokkien mee, they might charge people about 20,000.
30,000.
For the recipe.
30,000. That is 20 years back. So no cheap.
Yong has a clear understanding of the business value of his food and cooking, but I wondered what his opinions were on preserving the cultural value of his work through a cookbook. This led us to an interesting comparison between his business and McDonald's. Would you ever try and preserve your recipes by writing a cookbook or something like that so it survives?
Many people have approached him. He wanted to write this book, and he approached him many times, but he didn't want to do it.
Everybody know McDonald's, yeah? So McDonald's start is 2 brothers. They start in a very small store in San Francisco city. These 2 brothers, they are American, are very hardworking. They're doing their own small business with the hamburger and hot dog. So this American businessman come and eat. But this businessman, American, come before, he come and eat hamburger and hot dog. He already have the mind to buy business. Second time come, hey guy, you like millions? These 2 brothers will say, yeah. Do you like to buy? You like to sell business? Yeah. What's your price? Later on, this businessman will tell him, I'll buy. I give you very big business. When I buy, you still have a contract to work for me so long and so long. Yeah. Tell me what's your price? When they have the meeting, 2 brothers together, I give it. Are you sure? So price. Are you happy? Okay, sign. The lawyer starts sign. These 2 brothers jumping. Oh, we'll be millionaire now. So okay. So it is the same.
So you were that if you gave your recipe, it would just become like McDonald's, and it's then not the same.
Not the same.
Not the
right.
same.
Okay.
Yeah, the same.
Yeah.
All food you come is packaging. Packaging.
I was fascinated by this idea of packaging, and that how something is packaged doesn't tell you much about the true value of its contents.
Me, you, and you, before we were married, we look at a beautiful girl first. The restaurant, the same. Packaging. Everybody look at girlfriend. Oh, she beautiful. Hi. Oh, your hairstyle very beautiful. Actually, we are looking for talking to her. So the restaurant the same. If I am not beautiful restaurant, I don't attract. Now today you want to buy cake or any other things you want to buy. You're looking for good packaging, yeah? This restaurant the same. People don't pay attention to it. Nobody care. People coming here, look at this bloody old table and chair. Bloody old fan, bloody old. This lamp, you know. Look at these two bloody old uncle and auntie. But when they taste it, it's very good.
While I understood Yong's position on protecting his culinary IP, I still couldn't help thinking about the cultural knowledge that he holds. This turned out to be a sensitive conversation, and he's been approached about this topic many times before.
They say, Uncle, if you don't teach me, later on you die, everything go away. It's very bad. They have this attitude. They say, Uncle, when you die, everything going away. You don't left in the society. It's very bad. They say, Uncle, before you die, you tell people. Very bad. I tell them, you know the story about McDonald's? That's why today, you never know. These two brothers, they're selling at the roadside over 100 years ago. Then today, you have this McDonald's. Is these two brothers start first?
So, Yong's refusal to share his culinary knowledge is, in his own way, a form of cultural preservation. It's preventing his cooking and his cuisine from turning into something that's unrecognizable. This means, however, that his food and these cultural values may disappear.
Now, if my son is not taking over, it's going to be. Everybody seems to say that, Auntie, Uncle, where can we get this kind of food when you live? So we say, we can't help it. This is all very traditional food, and we're also sad if we have to leave, you know.
So that was Tanti Yong and Sherine Tan from Happy Garden Restaurant. So the first thing that kind of struck me about that interview is this concept of like cooking and the skills of a chef as intellectual property.
Right, yeah.
So we say that not in the legal sense because recipes aren't protected by copyright law.
Sure.
But I think when I come across someone like Yong and he's really protective of his recipes, initially I'm shocked because I'm all about sharing and caring.
Yeah.
But I'm not a chef by trade. And then when I hear his story about how he had to learn these recipes and how he learned by observation, learned by trial and error, I start to really understand why he's so protective of his cooking and why he's not willing to sell it to anybody.
Yeah. It's something that also probably should be noted upon for those that haven't maybe been over to Malaysia. But I would say compared to the UK, albeit there are these international chains like McDonald's and KFC and what have you that are over there, there is a massive amount of independent family restaurants and things like that. Yeah. And so there would be lots and lots of restaurants, as you say, selling Hainanese Chicken Rice or whatever it might be. And so people are more adept at knowing what they want, knowing how things should be made in such a certain way, and they will have their allegiances based on their favourite restaurants. Whereas I would say over here, a Thai restaurant opens and there's maybe only 2 in Glasgow, so of course it will probably do well unless the food is utter garbage. And so, you know, the idea of not being able to share recipes because, you know, of the prevalence of the same types of cuisines that are all independents is vitally important as your IP.
But as much as I understand where Yong is coming from, this protectionism does then risk the preservation of that culture, as they both mentioned at the end.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting the way that he kind of like did this whole judging books by their covers and stuff like that, and the integrity of it. Integrity has not come up as a barrier to the preservation of culture in our research so far.
Yeah,
but it's certainly a valid one and a really kind of thoughtful one.
I think the concept of packaging and how we package our culture is a really important one. And Yong was the first interview that we actually did.
Yeah.
And when he said he didn't want to pass on his knowledge, I was kind of shocked. But when he started talking about packaging, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because as the trip went on, all I could think about was how we package our culture and how we package our cuisine.
Right.
And that people care more now about the packaging and the wrapping than the actual substance of what's inside.
Yeah.
We saw a few episodes ago when we were talking to David Neo and Lillian Tong of the Chinese Peranakan community, and they were saying the same thing, that Chinese Peranakan culture is being commodified to such a degree that it's no longer reflective of the actual culture.
Yeah.
You see that with McDonald's. McDonald's is being packaged in such a way that presents this American burger culture, but is that what it actually is? And then you think about Malaka, which I just discussed, as this UNESCO World Heritage City, and how are we packaging that as a Thai floating market?
Yeah. Authenticity, and I think something that we had a good think about was cultural custodians to kind of make sure that their cuisine and their culture, what have you, is preserved properly.
Yeah. I think Yong's story really adds another layer of complexity to thinking about how do we talk about our culture, how do we preserve our culture, the role of individuals, the role of businesses, and how messy this can all become when we start thinking about authenticity, integrity, commodification, cultural appropriation, but also modernism and the need to adapt.
I think one of the biggest takeaways in the research of this podcast was the various different ways that people have gone about preserving their culture, whether it's Ronnie from the Orang Asleys, making all of this video and photographic content about, the kind of the dress and the music and what have you.
And making new cultural elements that didn't exist.
Yeah. And kind of, I guess, maybe plugging gaps or whatever it might be. And then, to come total end of the spectrum with Yong here and not wanting to preserve his, write down his recipes. He wouldn't even let us in his kitchen. Like, when we were there, we were kind of curious, not to snoop, but just to,
observe.
To observe, that this is a restaurant that this guy has ran for decades and absolutely forbidden. Like, just didn't even want us to see how, like, his mise en place or the way that he has his jars and whatever, kind of all set up. It's all top secret.
It's really been a fascinating experience to talk to so many people in Malaysia at various different stages of cultural preservation, if you like, to hear their stories and to hear the work they're doing. So if you are in Malaysia, I definitely encourage you to check out some of those traditional Hainanese restaurants. And if you can't find them, do at least get some chicken rice and go and visit a kopitiam.
Yeah.
So if we go back to our food symbol of the day though, chicken rice, for most people like me, a dish of comfort and a symbol of Hainanese culture in Malaysia and Singapore. But there's always that much deeper story. And I think chicken rice is a reminder of the Hainanese community and their role in Malaya in the service industry in catering to those wealthy British households during the days of the empire. So I think it's really important to remember and to acknowledge that point in history.
Yeah, we've covered a great deal in this episode. I appreciate the patience, hopefully, of our listeners, if any of you are hanging on, about how much history we've covered and how much kind of like philosophical thought goes into the preservation of culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the end, not just of the episode, but of the whole season. It has been a crazy ride, Philip.
What an adventure.
Over the past 10 episodes, we have been on such a massive historical journey of the Malay Peninsula.
My brain is bursting with information.
Mine is too. We've seen how the land and the people have been transformed by trade and colonization, and we see all that in the culture and cuisine today. And I really hope our listeners have gotten something out of this podcast. It's been a massive joy to produce. I've learned a lot making it, and so I hope others have really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've gotten so much out of this as an outsider, and I hope that non-Malaysians have gotten as much out of it as I might have.
Indeed. And, we have to say thank you to all the guests that we've had on this season for giving up their time, sharing us their stories. They've been so generous.
Yes, the Malaysian hospitality being afforded to us has been quite immense.
Indeed. But Philip, we're not ending things here. This is just the end of season 1, and we've got lots more to share for you in season 2, because there's a whole another part of Malaysia that we haven't really explored much, and that is the Borneo side of Malaysia.
I feel like those people in Sarawak and Sabah feel forgotten about once again.
Yeah, but folks in Borneo, if you're listening, we haven't forgotten about you. And we've got plenty of stories and interviews from Sarawak and Sabah to share with you next season. We're gonna explore the peoples of Borneo, the history, the cuisine, the culture of today. We're also gonna look at how the Malay Peninsula and Borneo were impacted by World War II, that long road to independence, and what Malaysia is like today. So it's a jam-packed season that we're preparing for you right now. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us on this journey, and we hope to see you soon for season 2 of Satay.
Okay.